Okay, ready?
Just
Okay.
one sec. No, just wait for me to say it.
We're going to do quick introductions at the beginning, right, Samantha?
Yes, we can do that. Yes, because you need to.
And we are live.
Okay. Hi, welcome to Stuyvesant High School School Leadership Team meeting. We have a special meeting today with Superintendent Orland. Before we get started, we're going to take some time and each person is going to introduce themselves with their name and which constituency they represent. And if they have a particular, like with the parents, if you want to say which class you represent, that would be fine, although you don't have to. My name is Samantha Daves. I am the UFT chapter leader. I am also a chemistry teacher at Stuyvesant High School.
My name is Alex Shaffron. I'm a co-president of the Stuyvesant Parents Association, and I'm a parent of a rising junior.
And why don't we just go across the first row and then down?
Hi, Vivian Orland, Manhattan High School Superintendent.
Okay, I think maybe we display differently.
Oh,
I think we do. I think we do.
We do. Okay, so I'll call on Mr. Cologne. Introduce yourself.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Angel Cologne, SAPIS counselor and Spark program coordinator, DC 37.
So nice to see you, Angel.
Mr.
Thank you, Vivian.
Mr. Giordano.
Hi, my name is Julian Giordano. I'm a rising senior now at Stuyvesant. I'm the student government vice president.
Nice to see you again, Julian.
Nice to see you too.
Mr. Rush.
Hi, everyone. Mark Rush, the Deputy Superintendent, Manhattan High Schools. Nice to see everyone.
Ms. Agrawal.
Hi, my name is Anu. I am a parent of a rising junior.
And Ms. Giordano.
Hi, I'm Joanne Giordano. I am the parent of a rising senior, a junior SLT rep from the year that just ended.
Mr. Henderson.
Hi, I'm Mark Henderson. I am an English teacher, UFT, etc.
Can you repeat yourself, Mr. Henderson? It was hard to hear you. Uh-oh.
It is always hard to hear me. Can you hear me now? I'm an English teacher, UFT. Hello.
Hi.
Ms. Ju.
Hi, I'm Connie Su. I'm the parent of a rising junior. I'm the SLT representative of class 2022 and also the Chinese Outreach Committee co-chair.
Okay, Ms. Ju. Oh, we can't hear you.
Hi, my name is Haiyin Ju. I'm the SLT sophomore representative, and I have a child, rising junior. Thank you.
Ms. Maggio.
Hi, everybody. I'm Miss Maggio. I'm a biology teacher here at Stuyvesant.
Ms. G.
I'm Caroline, and I'm an SLT alternate for the students.
Mr. Wasatsky.
Hi, I'm Eric Wasatsky. I'm a social studies teacher at Stuy, representing the teachers.
Hi, Eric.
Hi, how are you?
Ms. Zhang.
Hi, my name is Miona Zhang. I am the SLT for 2023. My kid is raising a sophomore.
And Dr. Haber. Oh, we can't hear you.
Assistant principal and technology.
Nice to see you, Dr. Haber.
Mr. Moran.
Brian Moran, assistant principal.
Thanks for coming, Brian.
Thank you. Hi, Vivian.
Mr. Green. Oh, we can't hear you.
That better?
Yes, thank you.
Hi, Michael Green. I'm the parent of a graduated senior, and I'm the SLT rep for seniors.
I remember you.
Yes.
Yes, correct, from Nest.
Yes. Well, no, not next. A C30 or two in the past.
Okay. Okay, yeah, we've done C30s together. There you go.
Yeah.
Nice to see you again.
Too.
Sadly so under these conditions, but it's nice to see you again.
Thank you.
Ms. Choi?
Hi, my name is Ellie Choi. I'm a parent of a rising senior and a junior now. And I'm an alternate for SLT rep.
Hello, Miss Choi.
Hi, Miss Vivian.
And Ms. Jennings?
I am a graduated senior. I was the student SLT representative this year, and now I'm here. So nice to see you all.
And where are you going to school, Nina?
I will be at Georgetown, hopefully in the fall.
Exactly. Nice to meet you.
Mr. Sofat?
Hi, I'm Vishwa. I was student union president, and I was the SLT student rep, but I'm a graduate senior. It's nice seeing you again, Vivian.
It's so nice to see you. And who's lucky enough to have you in the fall?
I'll be going to UC Berkeley, but I think I'm going to be sticking around in New York City for the fall.
Nice to see you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Ms. Pedrick?
Hello, Casey Pedrick, Assistant Principal, Pupil Personnel Services.
Hi, Casey.
Hello.
And Ms. Pridgeon?
Hello, I'm a rising senior at Stuyvesant and also an SLT alternate for the student body.
And Ms. Ho?
Hello, everyone. Nancy Ho, SLT junior rep, and I have a rising senior.
And Ms. Fennessy?
Hi, I'm Susan Fennessy. I am an outgoing co-president of the PA and parent of a student who just graduated.
Nice to see your flowers.
So for today, Ms. Orland is going to talk about the C30 process, all the steps involved, who is involved. Before she gets to those details, she does have a question for the team. So I'm going to turn it over to her. Ms. Orland.
Thank you. So first off, thank you all for taking time out of your busy lives to meet with me. I am going to definitely invest time in answering whatever questions you may have. I know that you received the C30 regulations, and I imagine that, some of you have had an experience being on C30s before. There have been a few minor tweaks to the C30 regulations, which I'm going to underscore for those of you who are familiar with the regulations. But I really just want to make sure that moving forward in the process, whatever questions you have, I can answer. So I am really sad to be here with you all right now. When your principal shared with me that he was ready to move on, I was really sad. I think that over his 4 years with all of you, he has done great work, and I know that we are all going to miss him. At the same time, there is a truism, in life, but there's also a truism for sure that plays out in the Department of Education, which is, as wonderful as certain individuals are, we are all replaceable. We look different, we have different strengths, and we have different areas that we need to pay attention to, but I am deeply committed and pride myself very much as a superintendent who really tries to find the best principal for any one of my 48 high schools that I am responsible for. And so as soon as Eric shared with me that he was leaving, I began to get proactive in a sense, and I'm going to say behind the scenes, right, with one of the deputy chancellors to basically make an ask. And my ask, which, you know, is going to make some sense to some of you, is that in the midst of a leadership transition, in the midst of the most uncertain of times, I wanted to make sure that I could post for a principalship because I've learned some things about your school community over the years. Your school is an incredibly complex organization. It is an incredibly beautiful organization. But the skills of a principal for Stuyvesant are a little bit different than the skills needed for a principal of a 400 student school. In light of the pandemic and in light of, at some point, a reopening, whatever that may look like and however that gets defined, right now it's really important to me to try to find a leader who potentially has served as a principal before. And I say that to you because I'm going to kind of open up a conversation and we're going to use the chat function for that. It's not that an assistant principal can't become the next principal of your school. So please do not, you know, write down, she said an assistant principal can't be it. But what I am going to say to you is, because of the needs of your school, because of the challenges of your school, when I needed to help you find a principal before, and we found Mr. Contreras, he had been in the principal's chair before. Now it was different, right? There were different kinds of schools that he served in, but there was an experience he had both as a principal and then working in Central, which allowed him to understand, I believe, kind of the complexities of an organization. So if you asked Superintendent Orland, what's a quality she is looking for, not the only quality, but a quality is, I am first looking for and having conversations with current sitting principals, trying to encourage people who I think could be a good fit for your school to consider applying. So a quality for me is that somebody has been a successful principal prior to walking into your school building. So what I'm going to ask each of you to do right now in the chat, and this is going to be sort of formal documentation for me, is every time I meet with an SLT in this process, I always ask for stakeholders to share qualities. I'm going to ask you to spend 5 minutes now from your own vantage point as a DC 37 member, as an assistant principal of the school, as a parent, right, as a student leader. What are the qualities that you value in a principal for your school? And I open up the chat for you to enter that right now. And that will then become, I believe, a transcript for me that I think maybe Alex is going to help me capture. Word on the street told me you can do that for me, Alex.
Yes, absolutely.
Beautiful, beautiful. Okay. So does anyone have any questions about how to use the chat? So take 5 minutes, qualities you would like to see in the next principal for Stuyvesant High School. And I'm going to start the clock. About another minute and a half. These are really helpful. And I'm just trying to look for some patterns, but just another minute and a half. Okay, that's super helpful to me. Thank you all for sharing. And don't feel like if something comes up in the next 5 minutes, you can still add it. It's not like there's this one shot. So a few things I'd like to kind of maybe open the floor to a little bit, because I want to understand what some people have spoken to. So prior to Mr. Contreras, it's funny, I wish I had the notes from that conversation with an SLT once to now, because I do think the school is in a different place, and that's a good thing. So one thing that I'm kind of struck by that I would love to maybe hear you speak to a little more, specifically the folks who I think wrote it, is if you could speak a little bit more about STEM, and what about STEM, what about STEM is important to you and to the school that I need to kind of better understand? That would be really helpful. And I open the floor to anybody who would like to speak to that.
And to make that a little organized, if people just want to put their little hand icon up, I can call on people that put their hand icon up.
That's an example of something that was not spoken to prior to. Yeah, go ahead.
So I actually speak on that. I come from the STEM area. So over the past few years, we've seen growth in some of our STEM areas. And, you know, in the chat, I had noted that one thing that's important is the ability to see the needs of the 21st century. So we've started to build along that path, but there's still place for growth. So for example, one of the things that happened last year is one of our computer science teachers was granted a sabbatical to study cybersecurity so that we could institute some cybersecurity classes at Stuyvesant. And if you read the Wall Street Journal at all in the past year or two, you'll see that there's a huge need for people in that area. And we need to start getting students prepared for a lot of these new careers. And I think we have an excellent faculty that has the ability to teach well, and we need someone who can collaborate with the faculty and see what strengths that they have and how we can bring that to our students and really develop interests in STEM. And that is just one thing that we have done. We have also started an engineering program with a generous grant from Erwin Zahn, and that has grown. There are opportunities for growth in other areas. You know, our physics department has, you know, is fairly small. It would be good if that, you know, people can look at that and see areas for growth there. And also some of the current faculty have expertise in certain areas, and to tease out what that is and how we could offer great opportunities for students. And there are a lot of other STEM areas. There's also after school activities, and our robotics team flourishes. So we'd like to have someone, you know, who would be very supportive of that, the robotics after school program and many other programs. So.
Thank you. That was, no, that was very helpful. It's from maybe a parent perspective, maybe because you have a son or daughter who is interested in the world that Ms. Daves just sort of spoke to. Is there a parent that would want to sort of enlighten me a little bit more from a parent perspective around STEM?
Yes. My name is Hayin. I have a sophomore rising junior daughter, but I also have a son who graduated from Stuyvesant. His major is computer science. And I think Stuy prepared him very well in STEM part, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. I think Stuyvesant has the best computer science program among the many public schools. And the students admitted to our school have very strong math skills. And they have the, I think as a parent, we should support our kids. And as a parent, I also expect the school provide resources, and the teachers can teach my kid more like STEM subjects, including computer science, because science is everywhere in the world around us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So something else that sort of I want to kind of call out, and this is really from some of the student voices, a leader who makes sure students are safe, a leader who walks the halls, which I think about as being visible. It's not a principal who's leading a school from an office behind closed doors. A leader who is okay with getting kind of, critical feedback about issues that need to be addressed. Hoping a student or two might be able to speak to kind of those qualities and why that's important to you from a student perspective.
Yeah, I can speak briefly. I think from the student perspective, and something that I think we really appreciate with Mr. Contreras is Stuyvesant has a really active student government and student population. We have a lot of clubs, a lot of affinity groups. Now more than ever, students are really active, and having an open door policy, having a principal who walks around the halls, talks to students, proactively asks for their input, and when students have criticism to offer, takes it well, and then talks with the students, how can we improve this, and engages in that cycle, coming to SLT meetings, having these conversations with us, and then like purposely working to make sure there's like pathways for student voice, not just for student government leaders and club leaders, but also, what about the non-traditional types of student leaders whose voices don't get heard a lot? How can I incorporate those into decision making? So like that open mind and willing to incorporate youth, and also sort of a like authentic youth adult partnership, not listening to youth voice in a tokenizing way, but listening to it in an authentic way, and students actually have something to input. And I think those are all qualities where I would look for in a principal.
Thank you. One more.
I was just gonna really quickly
Let me
say.
hear from a student, and then we'll hear from you, Miona. Okay.
Yes. I was gonna say really quickly that in the 4 years that I was at Stuy, like one thing that I really felt was special was it didn't really matter, you know, what club you did or what activity you did. Mr. Contreras always sort of made an effort to like be there for like a play or a concert or a sports game, right? And it's that involvement that a student wants to see, that when their principal comes and cheers for them or is waiting for them after the performance and is like, you did a great job, and like shakes your hand and pats you on the back and like is there to sort of uplift and support you, like reminding you that you sort of really do matter in this community, that's a very special just like praise, right? And I think that's what really made Mr. Contreras like this person that students really felt comfortable going to. So I think it's like having that open door policy and having that outward personality that Julian sort of talked about, and really taking the criticism, but also putting yourself out there actively so that students know that they can come to you. Because students won't just do that with an open door. They need to know that the person, like, you know, like when they go beyond that door is going to actually listen and engage and be there for them.
Thank you. And let's just hear from parent on that piece.
Yes. Hi, my name is Miona. I'm the freshman SLT, and my son is going to be a sophomore. With the limit budget, there would be like certain area that would be considered the focus for enhanced opportunity. And being a leading a STEM school, student with strong interest in STEM would be looked forward to. That's what like we expect that will happen in our school. Thank you.
Thank you. So I want to just say something for those folks who are not able to access a chat during kind of this process. There is going to be an opportunity as faculty and staff, as parents, and as students. There is going to be an opportunity for the larger Stuyvesant community to have input, but this was sort of an example of just sort of ways in which, for me initially at this phase, it's helpful for me as I have conversations with potential principals. So thank you for that. I think the one thing I would like to hear a little bit more of, and then I think we're going to jump into sort of the actual C30 process. I didn't really, I heard and saw some pieces around, you know, wanting students to make sure they feel safe, right? An engaged leader, a collaborator. There's a lot of the skills that people spoke to that obviously are important for a principal, no doubt. Because your school has both high academic standards, right? A young person who, number one, gets accepted to the school and then is successful in the school is a student who wants to work incredibly, incredibly hard. From my perspective, right, every time a student needs to be hospitalized, anytime a student has in some ways threatened themselves, I am in my role aware, right, of students who self-harm. And so what I would love to hear, I know that Ms. Pedrick, right, obviously in her role, I think has done a lot to better address the kind of social emotional needs of students. And when I think about your school community in September, right, or October, just in this COVID-19 moment, I know that you have young people, right, who have lost family members. You have young people whose families have lost jobs, right? That your school community as a cross-section of New Yorkers has been impacted. And I'm wondering what thoughts people have, and certainly Ms. Pedrick could speak to it, but just to hear from a few other voices, what you want to make sure might be in place for your school in a reopening. Whatever, again, and when I say reopening each time, whatever that reopening, however that gets defined, but a reopening and some sort of reentry. So I open the floor to just better understand how important that is to all of you in terms of a leader paying attention to that aspect of a young person at Stuyvesant.
Mr. Henderson.
If you can't hear me, just let me know. I'm sorry.
I hear you now.
I mean, as you say, this is a special issue at Stuyvesant that has gone on because of the high stakes and the large amount of work that everybody has to do. We have a lot of kids who end up attempting or threatening suicide or other kinds of harm. But I think that's, I guess I don't exactly know how to respond to your question, given that it's like, no matter what the situation is, and no matter who the leader is, that feels very important for, it feels like it's going to be important no matter who it is, for them to be paying attention to, the sort of the emotional needs of our students as like, sort of step one, and then everything else kind of on top of that.
So let me ask my question maybe a little differently. So right now in some schools, principals with teams, right, are trying to think about how to make sure they're more closely tracking young people who have sort of fallen by the wayside for all different kinds of reasons, right, in this moment.
Mm-hmm.
And because your school, and I say this with all due respect, it's like, we got to get back to work. Young people want to get back to work. Students' academic life and their intellectual world is so important to them. And that's partly why they want to be where they are. Sometimes, so you kind of sometimes have a culture in a school where you have the teachers, and the teachers need to pay attention to kind of the academic world. And then there's kind of the guidance world, right? And Mr. Cologne, there's like these other supports that exist. And I guess just wondering from your perspective how important it is, and I do want to try to push you on it, how important it is that the next leader comes in, not with like, this is what we're going to do plan, because I appreciate what people said here. I would agree with everything that was said in terms of you need a listener to come in, you need a learner to come in. You do not need, your school is not a broken, failing organization that needs to be completely rejiggered. But if there was one area that I think your school can continue, it's sort of like a little bit of an Achilles heel in the school. And that how do you just make sure that this leader is paying attention to the supports that young people need as well?
Mr. Cologne, was your hand up?
Yes. So again, hi everyone. Again, Angel Cologne. So I think one of the things that obviously COVID has taught us is in terms of really looking at, our remote skill sets. And, a lot of this, and again, I'm speaking on the counseling end in terms of the remote counseling support that we were able to provide, again, through a lot of the platforms of the school counseling department. And again, I'm sure Ms. Pedrick will add to it. But with that, we've had obviously Mr. Brian Moran and Dr. Aber, in terms of school building safety, and again, them, communicating a lot of the things that they were also doing. So again, there's a lot of collaborations along with, Dina Ingram, who again provides a lot of the community outreach, parent support, but also working with students in terms of family engagement. As well as we had a series of evening forums where we were talking to the communities, in terms of updating information, obviously, the collaboration with the Parent Association. So I think what, if anything, is that we were able to kind of really combine a lot of these resources. And again, obviously the teachers, the faculties that were also working with the students, and a lot of them, like I said, also servicing as, support, not just in terms of a teaching capacity, but also providing that social emotional support. Some of them working with the students in terms of the academic demands, because again, this was really just new. This was just hitting us on all levels. Plus what currently is going on, with everything that's currently going on, hitting it all at once, it really took, this unity of our community to really come together to really brainstorm effective, approaches. So, and I think, part of that was, I think just the overall collaboration, seeing ways where we can be effective in our delivery, in our outreach, phone calls, newsletters, which again, that was also, I think, another thing that was a key that, we do these weekly information of information, just really getting out. And also the students also provided that extra outreach, in terms of reaching out to their fellow peers and, providing that mentorship. And whenever they needed any kid that they were in contact, they would make those referrals. So I think, now that we're in July, and obviously we started summer school as of today, again, there's some of us that are working this summer. And so I think we're continuing to, stay connected with, students. I think students know that they can contact us, through any means, through the emails. So I think, this is just something that we're just constantly, communicating this information, getting the word out. And again, I just think it's just something that it continues to progress as we figure things out moving forward.
Thank you, Mr. Colon. So do you want to continue on this line, Ms. Orland? Because I see 2 hands up.
Well, if you don't mind, I didn't put my hand up, Ms. Davis, but since we're talking about my team, I wanted to jump in and just say that
I would like to, I'd like to hear from Casey for sure. And then we're going to press pause because I want to be mindful of time and make sure that like the Q&A does not feel rushed, because I know people have a lot of questions. So go ahead, Casey.
Sure. So one of the things that has been valued in the last 2 principals, I've worked under 3 of it, but not as AP, under the last 2 as assistant principal, has been the school counseling, college, Spark, and social work departments. And we are very, very fortunate to have 17 counselors and a very small ratio of counselor to students, considering that the state ratio is about 460. The nationwide is 460. Our state is actually well over 600 in the ratio. So we're very, very fortunate at Stuyvesant to have that be something that's been valued by the past 2 principals, to be able to keep our team strong. I think that the type of person who goes into a counseling profession is not one who's very peacocky and, shouts their own praises. And that, combined with the confidentiality of our work, keeps us from being too much at the forefront, sharing all the work that we've done. In the time that we've been remote, I think we've been working twice as hard. So our ordinary 8-hour day that gets, lunch goes by the wayside and trips to the bathroom get interrupted 3 times on the walk, has actually increase. And I've seen the team just pull out all stops to, of course, keep the students on track academically. But for us, it's the social emotional piece and making sure that they're matched to referrals that they need, that they know they have someone at the school rooting from them. Even in this time of COVID, myself and other counselors did home visits, social distance visits with students and parents, which we didn't tell anybody that we were doing. We just went and did it because that's what the kids needed at the time. So definitely for our new principal coming in to be able to continue to support that work and help us to provide the best services we can for our kiddies.
Thank you for that. That's great. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So I know, Alex, do you want to just share out what you kind of shared with me? It's your call, what you think is important to kind of share with the viewers.
think we just wanted to make sure that given that this is a public meeting, we have an opportunity for people to hear what kind of comments were suggested, put in the comments. So I think maybe having, maybe it's worth to quickly run through some of those that were not covered during
Sure,
your.
I think that's a great, excellent idea. Why don't you want to do that?
Yeah, sure. We want somebody who has a significant experience as a classroom teacher, somebody who has a respect and support for long-standing Stuy traditions. We want a principal who understands and elevates STEM education. We've talked about that. There were a few comments on that. Somebody who has a vision. We wanted somebody who is an instructional leader, a principal with experience across New York City educational cultural community, but still is in touch with Stuy values, someone who understands the value and encourage a variety of teaching styles, just to make sure that we, someone who values this social emotional aspect, and you've talked about that already, ability to relate to value and communicate effectively with each other, which each of the school's constituencies, overall leadership, proactive diversity leadership, equality is someone who is open-minded and can help transition into a new challenging climate. Commitment to discovery program as well as continued support for diversity. We've talked about that. Qualities, excellent listener, fair and consistent, show leadership and understand Stuyvesant. Inclusive of all stakeholders' needs and perspectives, respects the vision of Stuy, academic rigor while balancing it with an overall wellness of our children. Strong communicator, open door policy, equity-minded, committed to the school's mission, leader who fosters an environment of teamwork amongst all the constituencies, interest in small things students are doing around the school, strong collaborative skills, someone with very approachable, flexible, firm in making decisions that work best for students. I'm just trying to skip a couple that are engagement with students and authentic youth-adult partnership. Somebody who can lead us during this very unique time, personable, committed to providing equitable and accessible education for all students. Somebody who is willing to walk the halls and interact with students and hear from them, invite them to into discussions and decisions. And somebody who knows how to make school feel like a safe place for them. Effective delegator and somebody who can empower stakeholders, not micromanage. Somebody who has ability to navigate complex solutions, excellent communicator, genuine and open-minded interest in feedback from students with grievances, strong leadership, and sticking to decisions moving forward. Somebody who genuinely cares and for the interest about the interest of the students. Strong yet humble, compassionate instructional leader. Somebody who will be willing to learn from and share with others, supportive of faculty and faculty's academic and instructional growth and development. Somebody who doesn't shy away from calling out what can be made better, making strides towards fixing those things. Well, somebody that will stay longer with Stuy, that would be lovely. Somebody, definitely what would be best for students and community. Somebody who is fair to all stakeholders. I think I've covered pretty much all the points.
Thank you. No, thank you for that. I just want to make sure, since there's many people, I'm sure, watching, that was a good call. So thanks for that, Alex. Okay, so there is a chancellor's regulation, and it's really quite simple. It's actually not complicated. It's very simple. That's when I like regulations. If I follow the regulation and I do everything that regulation asks me to do, the process will be successful. If I do anything that veers away from that regulation, the hours of a committee's time can easily be tossed away and you start all over again. So what I have learned over time about the C30 process, which is the process by which, it's a chancellor's regulation, right? And it's a process by which ultimately I will listen to a committee that's comprised of stakeholders who will voice their recommendations to me as superintendent. In turn, I take those recommendations. I meet with the top 2 finalists at the end of sort of the level 1 C30, and I in turn make my recommendation to the chancellor. Now, the C30 process is a confidential process. It is not a process that can be simultaneously, YouTubed. It is only for those members of that committee. And that committee is comprised of, right, teachers, parents, in high school, luckily students. We have a representative from DC 37, which is one of our unions, which is why I asked Mr. Colon actually to be here today, because I wanted to make sure that that union that sometimes is not recognized was recognized. So thank you, Mr. Colon, for joining us. I also, and this piece is important specifically for Mr. Moran, Dr. Haber, Ms. Pedrick that are on this right now. So administrators in the Department of Education are also part of a union. And that union is the Council for Supervisors and Administrators, the CSA. As superintendent, I need to work with CSA to identify a CSA member. And it is my decision, and I do it all the time, that when I am conducting a C30 for principal, I work with CSA, I identify a sitting principal in the Manhattan High School District to be part of the committee. So when it's an AP to an AP position, then AP should be part of it. But from my vantage point, when it's a principalship, I want a sitting principal to be part of that process. So that's just something people should be aware of. Let's start with our SLT chair. So an SLT chair, in some instances, is a parent. In some schools, it's the principal. In some schools, it's a teacher, like we have in this instance. So because a teacher is the SLT chair, and there can only be 2 spots for UFT members, teachers, automatically you have 1 sitting teacher already on that committee, meaning you still have room for 1. Okay, so you have Samantha, plus you're going to need 1. In the regulations, you can never have more teachers, right, than parents. Parents in high schools are actually in any grade level. You can have 4 to up to 7 parents. You have to be parents of a student who has not graduated in the class of 2020. So like I heard Susan say, I think really thoughtfully, that her child just graduated. She was here as co-president, but at this point for a C30, she is no longer eligible to be on the C30 committee. And the same goes for our students who are here, who were serving on the SLT, but just graduated last week, right? They can no longer be on the C30 committee because they are no longer, right, students at the school. So the parent piece, it is up to the president. In this instance, I know it was a co-president, but you're kind of not, it's funny, Alex, you introduced yourself as a co-president, and I was like, well, kind of, but not really. You're
not anymore. Yeah.
Exactly, right. You're
Yeah.
just because for my clarity too, it helps me understand it, right? So, so now, if on the SLT, right, there are eligible parents to serve on the C30 committee, and you want to fill 7 of those seats, they have to be with anybody, right, who's currently a parent in the school. What I want to make sure I'm clear on so I can answer your questions, because I could feel them coming, I could feel them bubbling up, is that you have this sort of alternates, you have alternates. You do something very unique and somewhat different than some other schools. So I always want to respect the bylaws of each school. My understanding, and I could be wrong, is right now you have 4 or 5 SLT members ready to serve on the C30 as parents. Is that correct? Or
That's
you're
correct. That's correct.
That's correct. Is it 4 or 5?
I need to double check. I believe we have 5. Yep.
You have 5.
I believe, yeah.
So listen, you can, just so you understand, as the president, you could say, you know what, superintendent, we're good. We have 5 parents. We're done. That's option. That's one option. Or you could say, you know what, we really want to fill our seats because we have parents who really want to be part of this process. And you, as president, can name 2 additional parents who are on in the PA executive board or are serving as alternates. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes, it does. So our rule, just to reconfirm, so it's myself plus up to 7 parents. Is that correct? Or 6, up to 6. Yeah.
You plus 6, correct. You plus 6, exactly.
Yep.
Okay. And again, you know, what I want to say to the parent, to all of you here, what I have learned having done one of these remotely, it just takes a little longer when we actually do the interview process. So what I just want to make sure everybody understands is, right, you're volunteering, right? You're agreeing to sign a confidentiality agreement that the process is confidential, that the process is going to, and I'm going to share some more details while I have everybody here. It is going to take place on July 20th. There has to be an orientation for the C30 committee. That orientation is where the committee finalizes the questions that they want to pose to the candidates, reviews the resumes of the candidates at that time, reviews the regulations for the C30, and you know, decides who's going to ask which question. There's like just a few kind of like technicalities that you have to work out. So what I want to say is, if you start the process and you're available, you know, from 3:30 to 6, but at 6 o'clock you have to go take your kid to soccer. We should be so lucky. Then you can't be on this. You have to start. If you're going to start the interviews, you have to finish the interviews. So what I can say is the process is going to take a number of hours, starting at 3:30 and ending whenever the committee is done interviewing the last candidate. I like Mark Hender's like laughing. It's like, you will be there until it's over. So
we tend to be long.
Huh?
We tend to be long.
Oh, you tend to be, yeah, you like it long. Yeah, exactly. There you go.
Can you clarify?
that-
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Can you clarify the student number? So they currently have, I believe, one person, one student and two alternates. Is that correct, Julian?
Yeah, we have one student and two alternates, and yeah, I believe the regs say up to 2 students, but at least one.
You have up to two students. Now, here's what's just a little tricky, but I want to make sure we get this right. So, because listen, just so you all know, the more inclusive this process is, the better the process is. My job is not to create barriers or set limits. I just have to use the regulations. So what I want to make sure of is, right, so Vishwa's got, right, the class of 2020 has graduated. You remain now as the SLT senior, right, in the group, correct? Were the alternates voted on by students to serve as alternates?
No, only Vishwa and I were voted on.
So what I was told, because I did do some homework before meeting with all of you, because I anticipated some questions, is my understanding is that only you are eligible to serve on the C30 committee, not the alternates, because they were not formally elected.
Vishwa has a question.
Yeah, 2 years ago when we did the AP C30s, for the mathematics C30, one of the student representatives was not an elected official. So I'm just wondering if there's been a change in like the C30 regs since then, or did we do something?
Yeah, no, Vishwa, thank you for saying, so a few things have changed. Number one, I am now the superintendent, not the deputy. Number two, so that's changed. Number two, I read every regulation and I follow those regulations for a principal C30 to the letter of the law. I have to protect this process and do so with fidelity. So I want to make sure that, again, you know, Julian, if you want to reach out to like the face office, if you want to kind of figure out something, I'm not opposed to it. But what I was told is by an SLT expert is that unless they were elected by their peers, there's only one seat. Now, I want to say something about these seats and serving as a parent or serving as a UFT member or serving as a student, serving as DC 37. You are serving a broad group of individuals, right? So Julian doesn't show up there, right? He shows up as Julian, but he's there representing the voice, right, of thousands of students. And so whether there is one of him or there are two, he is not there just representing his own voice. And that's true for every stakeholder group here. You don't get to just go and ask the question that you're passionate about, because I'm going to explain sort of the next, like my next ask in this process, which is a change to the regulations that didn't exist before. And they just came into place this past year. So I'm going to speak to that.
And I have one clarification question on the DC 37. So is it that there are a number of DC 37 members? So is there anything else that Mr. Colon needs to do?
Yes. So if Mr. Colon is willing, and I would much prefer this than the other option I have, and I'll explain both options. So option one, Mr. Colon is a DC 37 member, convenes every DC 37 employee at Stuyvesant. They have a meeting. He explains that DC 37 members, there will be one at the C30. They hold their own election, or they have a conversation. However they decide to sort of work themselves into it, and they come up and say, you know what, Mr. Cologne, thank you so much. You're willing to do this. Great. The ayes have it. Mr. Cologne's going to do it. That's one option. The other option is, because there hasn't been a DC 37 member currently serving on the SLT, I could get on the phone, call the union, tell them exactly what I said here. There hasn't been one, and they will send somebody. My preference is always that the members represent the school community from which they're serving, not necessarily from outside. So I would much prefer to have a DC 37 employee from the school rather than outside, if you were willing to convene those folks, and you would need to do that lickety split.
And one more question. As Mr. Cologne has maybe reaching out to DC 37 and the parents have to figure out who their group is, and so do the teachers, the students, if they reach out to FACE, maybe they get an answer that changes things, but if it doesn't, it's just one. But anyway, is there a particular date by which you would like the names?
Yes, so I need to submit the formal, that's a great question, thank you for that. So the 20th is a Monday. I have got to, by noon on Friday, submit the names. My preference is, because I like to do things not at the final hour, I almost want to move it to Thursday in case there's a problem. I like to leave room for problems. So whatever that Thursday date is,
the 17th.
There you go, the 17th. And as the SLT chair, you would work with Mark Rush to get him those names.
Okay.
Okay. But it really is a stakeholder to stakeholder process, right? So UFT is going to convene. Parents are going to kind of figure out what they want to do with the two spots. And, and listen, I will say this. Again, I heard we have parents of rising sophomores, right? We have parents of rising, every parent right now who I heard from today, obviously all is deeply invested in who the next principal is. I mean, you all are, that's why you're here. You wanna just make sure that, you have good representation from different years. So they're not all, right, parents of rising seniors. They're not all parents. You just want to, and it sounds like you kind of, I think, have it already. It sounded like you have a nice cross section of parents.
We do, and just maybe one question or rather clarification. So the elected positions that are extended in their terms, because we did not have an election in June, correct, but rather are planning to have one in September, are only the positions of the co-presidents, treasurer, recording secretary, who am I thinking of? So basically only those positions. I don't believe I saw the SLT members, their term extended into that term. So I just wanted to make sure that we are clear. So we obviously have the representation from last year, and we're not including the senior parents, but all of them, even though they officially doesn't sound like the term has been extended, we are considering for all of the members, SLT members, to be eligible for this committee.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
No, thank you all. You're asking the right questions. Any other, let me just think for a second. If there's something that I know I wanted to, I think I covered everything I wanted to. I mean, I think maybe I would just call out, I guess, from sort of a UFT perspective, if in fact, right, as SLT chair, there's, you know, you have a teacher member who is in, you know, math, science, engineering, that they kind of wear that world at the school. It might be nice when you are interviewing a principal to think of having a UFT member who lives more in the humanities. You know, again, you want sort of diverse perspectives and different kind of lived experiences, because I think it's what makes for a really solid committee and a really thoughtful one. And in my experience and time, and Michael can attest, the C30 process it's a lot of work, and it is purely voluntary to do. So I thank you in advance for doing it. And I can tell you, doing it virtually is, you know, it is what it is. It's just different. But I will have somebody from my team who's there as sort of the, Mark Rush is the deputy, who's going to facilitate the process. And then I still get to have another team member there. Now I know what I did. I did want to talk to you guys about one other thing. Who will be there to kind of be like the technical support in a way for the process. So if we have waiting rooms, you want to make sure. I was on one where people were interviewing and the next candidate showed up in the room. I mean, I think we've gotten better at these different platforms, but and you guys get to choose the platform. So whatever platform you want to use for the C30, I just need to know, Mark definitely needs to know what it is. And we want to make sure that that we're technically ready to support the process, depending on the platform you use. The one other thing, yeah, there was one other note. So the other member who you do get to have, this is important. There is a slot for a partner from what they call an intermediary organization. From my vantage point, and I have to be honest, in conversation with actually Executive Superintendent Rosales, and then kind of a quick clarification from Principal Contreras, it makes sense from my perspective to offer, and we did this before with Eric. We had somebody from the Alumni Association sitting in the C30 process. So I'm going to meet with somebody from the alumni, and they're going to send somebody to be part of the process for the principal selection, which makes sense. So that was the one other position I meant to just talk to you all about.
Okay, and I'd like to add that Ms. Orland mentioned that this is not the only forum in which information is going to be gathered from all constituencies. And what I'm going to need to do is to talk to Mr. Shafran and Mr. Giordano and Mr. Cologne to talk about how we're going to gather. We're going to reach out to each of our respective constituencies. And we'll also actually need, I guess, Ms. Orland, would you like me to reach out to the administration on behalf of CSA, or you said you were going to get a principal to sit in as the CSA spot? So that's something we'll have to figure out.
No, listen, I mean, internally, no, thanks for that. That's a good clarifying question, because the outside person is just showing up that day. They're not going to be part of that. But if any of the assistant principals is willing to just convene to collect kind of questions, that would be helpful.
Mm-hmm. And the thing that we're looking for, so I guess Dr. Haber or Mr. Moran we can talk offline and figure out how that will happen, or we can ask one of your other colleagues if they want to.
The other piece, just so Mr. Cologne, thank you for that. You just want to convene them and make sure folks are okay, right, having you serve as the DC 37 rep. I don't imagine anyone's going to have a problem with it, but you just want to be public and transparent about it. That's it. Just in case somebody wants to have a runoff with you, you know?
Okay, and I do believe the thing that we're asking all our constituencies for, would be one main thing, which are one of the questions we would ask the interviewees. And then the second one would be the criteria that people would look for in a principal. You're giving me a face. Did I get the second one wrong?
So you're going to follow up, Mr. As SLT chair, you're going
I am following up, but I'm just telling everyone here so that everyone on the team understands what I'm going to be following up with.
Correct. So that's a piece of the regulation that changed where at some point the regulation went from just the SLT kind of generating questions to a window by which questions can be proposed by the broader school community, which is fine. It just takes a little bit more work and you have to be intentional with it. And if there's anything I know you all know how to do, it's be intentional.
I'll add that I'll provide Angel Cologne the list of DC 37 members and their contact information.
Perfect. Thank you. That's very helpful. Listen, there is an excellent leader out there for the school. Like, I have complete confidence that there is. And I am committed, and this part I think is important to maybe just underscore. On July 20th, if at the end of the interviews, the C30 committee is not excited about anybody, that you don't believe that the right person has shown up yet, then like we're not going to settle. Like I'm not going to settle because I have to check some box. A principal of the school is highly, highly important for so many of the obvious reasons that you all know. I don't need to lecture you on why it's so important, but I am telling you, I will not settle and we will not settle. And you know, the posting for the principal it is public. People, as long as they have the license and the credential to do it, they can apply. And you know, years ago, at the time, the SLT committee was like, we need a national search. We need a national search. And in a way, because we made this public, in some ways, it kind of is a national search. You can apply and be living in, you know, anywhere right now. As long as you have the credential, right, that's vetted by the Department of Education, not by Superintendent Orland, right, but by the Department of Education, you can apply. If you don't have the credential and you're amazing in all these different ways, it's not going to matter. So as long as you are qualified, you can apply to this position. And I anticipate that when this posting closes, there will be some promising candidates to choose from that will be worthy of an interview. Okay. Any final kind of comments or? Come on, we're in it to win it, people. Come on. I'm not feeling your energy.
That's a Zoom for you.
I know. Yes, thank you, Mr. Giordano. I'm going to stick with the norms you have.
Yeah.
I just wanted to follow up. You mentioned I should reach out to someone from FACE and ask them about rules regarding students. And I was just wondering if you had a specific contact in mind, or if I should just reach out to the Manhattan-based District 2 person, or.
Yeah, you know, who would you reach out to if you were going to?
I just did a quick search on the DOE website, and I found the people from the Manhattan Empowerment team all seem to be parent-based liaisons. It doesn't seem like there's anyone. I don't know who. That's why I'm asking. I don't really know who to reach out to.
I'm going to give you. So, what's the best way for me to give you I'll put it. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to put it in the chat.
Thank you.
That's why we have a chat. Hold on. I'm going to give you somebody that you can reach out to. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And while I'm talking, I actually had a real question as well. I'll give you a second.
No, go ahead.
But some students we were wondering what happens if the C30 process does fail, if we aren't able to appoint, if we don't find that perfect fit by the end of it.
Okay, so I will cry. And then I'll catch my breath, and then no. So no, that's a real question. So what has to happen? So by law, every school has to have a principal in charge. So there are instances sometimes, first of all, it's never not worked, but you need plan A and plan B. So if we're not happy with any of the candidates and we want to press, restart, there will be another posting and we kind of go back to zero again. But in the interim, what happens is I have to appoint what's called an interim acting principal to serve as principal of your school prior to us actually identifying a principal.
So since you had, excuse me.
No, and I really don't want to have to do that for so many obvious reasons. But I think the biggest obvious reason is that every school in September, has to have their leader, because their leader is going to have to navigate things that we can't even imagine right now. And so, I did share with you that I have had some conversations with sitting principals. Your school, there are many, 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 many people who want to be the principal at Stuyvesant. They don't always want to be the principal of Stuyvesant for the right reason. They don't always want to be the principal of Stuyvesant because they're really ready for it. You have an incredibly complicated school. And part of its beauty is how complicated it is. It is complex. And so when I said earlier, and I think first off, that ideally somebody who's been a principal before would step into this role, it's because I'm worried that someone who's never been a principal before is going to have to be learning all this new principal stuff simultaneously while they're managing, some crazy reopening model. And I don't think it's an ideal time for someone to have that steep a learning curve. So I feel protective of your school in that regard, which is why I'm invested in really hoping, not naively, but that the odds are that some strong candidates for the right reason are going to want to step up to follow in Principal Contreras' footsteps. I mean, I said before, no one's going to come in there and knock it down to rebuild it. It's like taking what's great and making it better and supporting the areas that continue to need support in collaboration with stakeholders, not to stakeholders. So I hope that was a long-winded way of answering your question, but I really believe this is New York City and you are Stuyvesant High School, and we're gonna find somebody excellent that you all deserve. And that you're going to want to support and work with.
Okay, I see two hands up, Mr. Wasatsky, then Ms. Sue.
Yeah, in your conversations with sitting principals, I guess what the reactions you were met with range from probably concerned to excited. I'm curious probably about some of the concerns or reservations sitting principals might have had.
Yeah, so I will just say that a pattern is the following, and it's real. It's one thing asking a sitting principal to leave a school, not during COVID-19. But there are principals who have assistant principals who are more ready to take over a school. So I can't take a principal I don't have a conversation with any principal unless I believe they have an heir apparent. I think that's a good way of, that there's somebody who they can pass a baton to. So that's kind of really where it's at. So it's not like I'm just talking to people blindly. I have to kind of know that there's, and then, you know, is that person ready to say yes? Because none of us are indentured servants in this system. Assistant principals love being assistant principals. Right, Brian?
Miss you.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Exactly. Exactly.
All right. So if you don't mind, I would like to ask a question in regards to the process. If I understand correctly, the hiring manager will be recommending 3 to 5 candidates to the level 1 committee for interview. So is there any opportunity for like the committee members to see other candidates in the pool, or they will only see these 3 to 5 candidates recommended by the hiring manager?
Great question. So I am the hiring manager, which I think you might have just figured out. And only I pick the candidates that move forward. But I appreciate your question, because part of the reason I ask you to identify and speak to qualities of somebody, that STEM piece for me was not necessarily at the forefront of some conversations I've been having. And I understand that it's maybe more valued now than it, like it's like, it's more valued now than it was 4 years ago by the committee, right, by stakeholders. Doesn't mean it wasn't important and it wasn't happening, but I hear that articulated in a way that's new for me. So that's a piece of a quality I know somebody needs to have. It's like a piece of their resume that they need to have. So that's very helpful. So you're not, when you give me these kind of qualities, it is not a waste of time. I take them really seriously, and then I have to try to, it's like a dating, it's like I'm a matchmaker in some ways. And I actually, believe it or not, I actually kind of like doing that work. And I will do my, you will get the best of based on the qualities, and then I'm going to get more input from like a broader group of Stuyvesant folks, so that when I make that cut, I feel like I'm bringing you the strongest applicants of those who apply. Okay. I want to be mindful of time. It is 5:30. Does this Zoom thing just evaporate and we all just disappear?
No, I have.
No,
yeah.
no, it won't.
Shut it off.
Oh, no.
We're here.
We could say goodbye. Good evening. It is 5:30. I hereby call this SLT adjourned for the evening. Thank you, everybody. And
thank you all so very much.
Thank you, everyone.
I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Many blessings.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Julian,
Vivian.
you got the email, yes?
I did. Thank you. I'll reach out.
Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Class of 2020. You're amazing. Get to Georgetown.
I think I'm going to stay on with Mr. Shaffron for just a second.
Okay. Do
And
either of you need